before the first bathers arrive.
Before the doors open, the bathhouse is almost quiet. Not silent exactly. A Roman bathhouse is never truly silent. Even before the first sandals cross the threshold, there is the faint lap of water against stone, the slow breath of heat moving under the floors, and the small noises of work being done by people who are meant not to be noticed. The attendant arrives while the morning is still soft. Outside, the street is only beginning to stir. A baker has already been awake for hours. A mule cart passes somewhere beyond the wall. But inside the baths, the day begins with heat. There are lamps to check, benches to wipe, bronze basins to set straight, and folded cloths to place where the bathers will expect them. Oil flasks are arranged in a neat row. Curved metal strigils, used to scrape oil and dust from the skin, are checked for sharp edges and old residue. Sandals are set near the warmer rooms because the floors in the hot chambers can become too uncomfortable for bare feet. The first duty is not glamorous. It is order. The changing room must look ready before anyone sees it. The niches for clothing should be dry. The floor should not be slippery. A misplaced tool or a forgotten cloth can make a fine public bath feel careless, and carelessness is remembered. The attendant knows the path the day will follow. People will come in from the street, carrying dust on their feet and business in their voices. They will leave their clothes, pass toward the warm room, sweat in the heat, rub themselves with oil, scrape the skin clean, and cool themselves in colder water before stepping back into the world. For now, though, the rooms belong to those who prepare them. The bathhouse waits in a low, golden dimness. The stones are still taking in heat. The pools are dark and smooth. And under the floor, hidden below the tiles, the furnace begins to turn the morning into steam.
The exercise yard.
Before some bathers enter the heated rooms, they pass through the exercise yard. It may be open to the sky or partly enclosed, depending on the bathhouse. The floor is worn by feet. The walls hold the warmth of the day. Here, bodies are prepared for bathing not by stillness, but by movement. There are simple games, stretches, wrestling practice, and the tossing of a ball from hand to hand. The sounds are different from the bathrooms. Less water, less echo. More breath, more footfall, more leather striking palm. The attendant does not need to join in. He watches the edges of the activity. A flask of oil is set down too close to a doorway. A towel is dropped where someone may step on it. A pair of sandals is kicked beneath a bench and forgotten. The work of the attendant is often the work of noticing things before they become complaints. In the exercise yard, the human life of the baths is easier to see. A distant figure bends to stretch a leg. Another leans against a column, waiting for a friend. Someone laughs, and the sound passes quickly into the open air. But even here, the rhythm remains gentle. The bathhouse is not an arena. No one has come to perform heroism. Most have come to loosen the body before heat, to shake dust from the mind, and to enjoy the small public luxury of having time. The attendant carries a folded cloth across the yard. He keeps his eyes on the stone underfoot, on the benches, on the small objects people forget. He understands that a public building is made of habits. The same men put their things in the same places. The same voices rise in the same corners. The same requests arrive before the same hour. After exercise, the bath feels more inviting. The warm room seems warmer. The oil moves more easily over the skin. The cold plunge feels sharper and cleaner. The exercise yard is the first loosening of the day. The bathhouse, waiting beyond the doorway, will complete the rest.
The changing room.
The first public room is the changing room, the apodyterium. It is not the most beautiful chamber in the bathhouse, but it may be the most important. This is where the outside world is set aside. A merchant unpins his cloak. A soldier loosens a belt. A tired clerk removes dusty sandals and places his tunic in a wall niche. A visitor with more money may have a servant watch his clothing. Someone with less money may glance back more than once, hoping his things remain where he left them. The attendant moves quietly among all this. He does not need to speak much. He points to an empty space, collects a small fee if that is part of the house custom, hands over a cloth, and notices who has come in a hurry and who has come to spend the afternoon. The baths are not only for washing, they are for talking, waiting, meeting, gossiping, exercising, resting, and being seen. A bathhouse is a map of Roman life in stone and water. Some visitors come after work looking for relief from dust, sweat, and noise. Others come after exercise in the palaestra, where bodies have been warmed by running, wrestling, or ball games before they enter the heated rooms. Some come because a friend is expected. Some come because there is news to hear. Some come simply because this is what a Roman does. The attendant learns the rhythm of their arrival. He hears the scrape of sandals and the soft thump of folded clothing. He hears small jokes, requests for oil, complaints about heat, and arguments about politics that fade as soon as the men step into the steam. He keeps his eyes low and his hands busy. In the apodyterium, there is always something to do: a spill to wipe, a towel to replace, a missing oil flask to find, a bench to clear for the next visitor. The room fills slowly at first, then all at once. Voices rise and overlap. The day has entered the bathhouse. And the attendant, nearly invisible among the movement, keeps the beginning of the ritual from becoming disorder.
Fees, niches,
And watchful eyes. The changing room is also a place of trust. A visitor enters with clothing, sandals, a purse, perhaps a ring, perhaps a cloak that cost more than he would like to lose. He comes to wash, but first he must put down the ordinary signs of who he is outside the bathhouse. The wall niches hold folded lives. One space contains a simple tunic. Another contains a better cloak. Another has sandals placed carefully together, heel to heel, as if order might protect them. A cautious man may look for a servant to watch his things. Someone wealthier may bring his own attendant. Someone poorer may rely on memory, luck, or the honesty of strangers. The bathhouse attendant moves through this anxious little world with quiet familiarity. He knows the visitors who worry. He knows the ones who pretend not to. He knows the small disputes that can begin when two men claim the same space, or when a belt is moved, or when a flask has rolled beneath a bench. There may be an entrance fee, small enough for many people, but still part of the ritual. Coins pass from hand to hand. A nod is given. A place is indicated. The visitor becomes, for a while, a bather. The attendant's task is not only to provide objects, it is to keep the room believable. If the niches are in disorder, the whole bathhouse feels untrustworthy. If clothing lies in puddles, the visitor feels badly treated. If a bench is crowded with someone else's things, irritation begins before the warm room can soften it. So the attendant straightens what can be straightened. He returns a sandal to its pair. He lifts a damp cloth from the floor. He places an oil flask where it will not be crushed. He remembers that small order in the first room allows ease in every room after it. The bathhouse promises comfort, but comfort begins with ordinary security. A visitor cannot relax in the tepidarium if half his mind remains in the changing room. The attendant understands this without needing to say it.
The warm room.
From the changing room, the bathers move toward the tepidarium, the warm room. The air changes before the doorway is crossed. It becomes softer, heavier, and gentler on the skin. The tepidarium is not meant to shock the body. It is a place of transition. The warmth loosens the muscles and prepares the breath for the hotter chambers beyond. Here, conversations become slower. People sit on benches along the walls, letting the heat settle into them. A visitor may stretch his shoulders. Another may close his eyes. Someone speaks about business in a voice that drifts upward and disappears into the curved ceiling. The attendant carries oil. Oil is part of the ordinary equipment of bathing. Romans do not use soap in the way later centuries will. Oil is rubbed into the skin, mixing with sweat and dust, and then removed with a strigil, a curved scraper of metal. A wealthy visitor might have someone else apply the oil and perform the scraping. An ordinary visitor may do the work himself. But the attendant still keeps the tools moving, the flasks filled, and the benches ready. In the warm room, small details matter. The floor must be dry enough to walk safely, but the air must remain moist enough to feel comforting. The lamps must not smoke too much. The oil should be close at hand. If a bather asks for a strigil, it should appear without fuss. There are human shapes in the room, but not drama. A shoulder under lamplight, a hand reaching for a flask, a figure seated at the far side of the steam, blurred by warmth. The bathhouse is public, yet softened by heat into something quieter. The attendant understands that the tepidarium is a room of patience. Too cool, and the bathers complain that the furnace is lazy. Too hot, and the warm room loses its purpose. So he listens, watches, and notices the signs. Flushed faces, relaxed backs, the slower pace of talk. Behind the calm, a machine is working. Heat travels beneath the floor, carried by air from the furnace through the hypercaust below. Above it, the bathers rest, unaware of how carefully comfort must be managed.
The hot room.
The caldarium is where the bathhouse shows its strength. It is the hot room, closest to the furnace, and the air inside can feel thick enough to hold. The floor is warm through the soles. The walls seem to give off heat of their own. Water rests in the basin with a faint shimmer, and the steam gathers in the higher spaces before slowly falling back into the room. This is the chamber that must be watched. If the fire below is too low, the bathers notice. If the fire is too strong, they notice even faster. The attendant is not always the one feeding the furnace directly. In larger baths, other workers, often enslaved, move below and behind the walls, hauling wood and tending the praefurnium. But the hot room tells everyone whether that hidden work is being done well. A Roman bath is a public pleasure built on private labor. The caldarium depends on people who carry, stoke, clean, empty, refill, and repair. The great rooms above may be painted and tiled, but below them are service passages, heat, smoke, ash, and the constant demand for fuel. In the hot room, the attendant moves with care. He may carry oil to a waiting bather. He may hand over a scraper. He may warn someone to use wooden sandals before stepping too near the hottest floor. He may collect a discarded cloth, wipe a bench, or guide a new visitor who has lingered too long in the heat. No one wants urgency in a bathhouse. Urgency belongs to streets, courts, markets, and war. Here, even discomfort must be handled gently. Steam curls around a bronze basin. A distant hand lifts a flask. A shadowed figure sits with his head bowed, letting heat do its slow work. The attendant counts the small signs of the room: breath, color, steam, water, flame. When the caldarium is right, it feels effortless. That is the trick of good service. The bather feels the warmth and calls it luxury. The attendant feels the work behind the warmth and calls it the middle of the day. Attendants in the steam. Inside the heated rooms, service becomes softer. The air itself slows movement. Steam blurs the far walls. Lamps appear larger than they are, their flames softened by moisture. A voice from the other side of the room sounds near and far at the same time. An attendant learns to move through steam without hurry. He carries oil carefully because a spilled flask makes the floor dangerous. He brings a cloth without letting it drag through water. He steps around sandals, benches, basins, and resting bodies. He knows where the stone is slick and where the floor is hottest. Sometimes he is summoned with a gesture rather than a word. A hand lifts from a bench. A head turns. A bather points toward an empty flask or a misplaced scraper. In a room made heavy by heat, even asking can feel like work. So the best attendant sees the request before it is spoken. The human presence in the warm rooms is not dramatic. It is ordinary and half hidden. A shoulder disappears behind steam. A seated figure leans forward with elbows on knees. A servant bends to pick up a cloth. The attendant passes in the background, small against the architecture, carrying the things that make leisure possible. Roman baths could be grand, but their grandeur was constantly interrupted by practical needs. Someone wants more oil. Someone has lost a sandal. Someone says the hot room is too hot. Someone says it is not hot enough. Someone wants a bench wiped, a basin moved, a tool rinsed, a cloak found, a friend located, a complaint heard. The attendant becomes a kind of quiet messenger between comfort and inconvenience. He cannot control every furnace, every pool, or every visitor, but he can keep the experience from fraying. He can replace what is missing, remove what is dirty, and make the room feel attended to. That phrase matters. Attended to. Not perfect, not silent, not untouched, simply cared for again and again through the steam. Oil and the strigil. After heat comes oil. The attendant knows the sound of an oil flask being opened. It is a small sound, almost nothing, but in the bathhouse it belongs to a familiar sequence. Warm skin, a little oil poured into the hand, slow rubbing over arms, shoulders, chest, and legs. Then the curved edge of the strigil drawn carefully along the body, lifting away the mixture of oil, sweat, and street dust. The strigil is a simple tool, but it asks for attention. Too light, and it does little. Too hard, and it scratches. The curve must follow the body rather than fight it. Some bathers do this themselves with the practiced awkwardness of ordinary routine. Others have a servant or attendant do it for them, especially after exercise. There is nothing hurried about the motion. The blade travels over the skin in long, even strokes. Oil gathers at the edge and is wiped away. A cloth is used, then set aside. Another flask is requested. Another scraper is rinsed. The attendant's hands move from object to object, keeping the ritual quiet and clean. Roman bathing is not only water, it is heat, oil, scraping, cooling, and rest. On a bench nearby, a small toilet kit lies ready. Oil bottle, strigil, perhaps a sponge, perhaps a small metal ring holding tools together. These are ordinary things, but ordinary things are often the clearest windows into the past. A person who lived nearly 2,000 years ago still knew the inconvenience of grit on the skin, the comfort of warmth after labor, and the relief of being clean before dinner. The attendant sees the human routine beneath the grand architecture. The bathhouse may have columns, mosaics, painted ceilings, and rooms with impressive names, but the work often comes down to a hand, a blade, a cloth, and a basin of water. The scrape of the strigil is soft and repetitive. In a sleepier telling, it becomes almost like rain, a slow movement, repeated until the day's dust is gone. Tools on the stone bench. The stone bench beside the pool holds a small inventory of Roman cleanliness. There is an oil flask, sometimes plain and sometimes beautiful. There is a strigil, curved like a question in bronze or iron. There is a folded cloth, a shallow basin, perhaps a sponge, perhaps a little bottle with a narrow neck. Nothing here is mysterious, and yet together these objects make a world. The attendant knows their weight. He knows the feel of a strigil when it is clean, and the unpleasant film when it is not. He knows which flasks pour too quickly. He knows which cloths are still dry enough to offer and which must be removed. He knows the sound of bronze set down on stone. In the bathhouse, tools travel constantly. They are borrowed, forgotten, requested, misplaced, rinsed, and returned. A bather who is careful places his own tools together. A bather who is careless leaves them wherever his last thought ended. The attendant gathers the trail. There is a calm kind of intimacy in these objects. They belong to the care of the body, but also to habit. The same curve of metal along an arm, the same oil warmed in the hand, the same cloth pressed against damp skin. Across time, these gestures remain easier to understand than laws, wars, or emperors. The attendant may not think of any of this as history. To him, the strigil is not an artifact. It is a tool that must be found before the next visitor complains. The oil flask is not a museum object. It is a thing that breaks if dropped, and must be cleaned if it leaks. The basin is not evidence of a civilization. It is heavy when full and awkward when someone leaves it in the wrong place. But this is why the tools matter. They remind us that daily life is made from objects used without ceremony. A bench, a bottle, a scraper, a cloth. Placed together in lamplight, they tell us almost everything about the quiet work of the room. Below the floors. The most important part of the bathhouse cannot be seen by most visitors. It lies under the floors, behind the walls, and near the furnace mouth, where heat begins as fire and becomes comfort. The hypocaust is a hidden world of raised floors and hot air. Stone or tile stacks hold the floor above an empty space. From the furnace, warm air travels through that space, then climbs through hollow wall tiles before escaping higher up. To the bather, this is simply a warm room. To the workers, It is a system that must be fed. Wood arrives. Ash is cleared. The fire is watched. The hottest rooms are kept nearest the furnace. The warm rooms sit farther away, taking gentler heat after the strongest has already passed. The cold rooms remain outside the furnace's reach. The attendant may not spend the whole day below, but he knows the signs of the hidden system. A floor that has cooled too much, a wall that does not radiate as it should, a caldarium that has lost its steam, a tepidarium that feels too sharp in the air. The building speaks through temperature. Down below, the work is less elegant. There is smoke, soot, sweat, and the smell of burned wood. There are baskets, fuel, tools, and men who may never be thanked by the bathers above. In the grandest complexes, service corridors and storage rooms can form a separate city beneath the pleasure of the public rooms. The contrast is part of the story. Above, polished stone, warm pools, talk, oil, and leisure. Below, furnace light, aching backs, ash, and the constant need to keep the system alive. The attendant stands between those worlds. He hears the complaints from above and understands the labor below. When the bathhouse feels calm, it is because many small corrections have happened before anyone asked. The fire is not peaceful by itself. It must be made into peace by work.
The furnace workers.
Below the pleasant rooms, the work is harder. The furnace does not care whether the bathers are relaxed, it only consumes. Wood must be brought, ash must be moved, heat must be watched and corrected. A bathhouse that feels effortless above can be exhausting below. The people who tend the fire may be enslaved, hired, commanded, or simply poor enough to do the work others would rather not see. Their world is not the world of polished stone and conversation. It is a world of soot, baskets, smoke, and repeated lifting. The attendant upstairs depends on them. When a visitor complains about the caldarium, the reason may be somewhere under the floor. When the warm room loses its softness, the answer may be in a fire that needs feeding. When the hottest pool cools too early, someone below may already be working harder than the bather imagines. Heat in a Roman bathhouse is a chain of labor. The tree is cut, the wood is carried, the basket is emptied, the fire is fed. Hot air moves beneath the floor. Stone warms, water warms, steam rises. A bather sighs and calls the room comfortable. Between the first act and the last are many hands. This is the hidden truth of the bathhouse. Leisure is visible. Labor is often out of sight. The attendant may pass near the furnace only briefly, but he knows its meaning. He can smell when smoke has pushed the wrong way. He can feel when a wall has not warmed enough. He can hear, beneath the public sounds of the baths, the duller rhythm of work continuing below. There is no romance in ash. It clings. It darkens skin and cloth. It settles in corners and returns after being swept. Yet without ash, without smoke, without the fireworkers' tired arms, there is no warm room, no hot pool, no comfortable public ritual. The bathhouse teaches this quietly. What feels gentle above may have been made by heat, pressure, and labor beneath.
The cold room.
After the heat, the bathers return toward the cold. The frigidarium is a room of contrast. The air is clearer here. The water is cooler. Voices sharpen for a moment as bodies leave the steam behind. A man who has lingered too long in the hot room may step down into the plunge pool with a quick breath and then laugh at himself. The attendant watches the floor. Cold water is refreshing, but spilled water makes stone treacherous. A cloth falls. A sandal slips. Someone shakes water from his hands and leaves droplets where the next person will walk. The room must be kept safe without breaking the mood of ease. In larger baths, the cold room can be one of the most impressive spaces. High ceilings, bright openings, pools set into the corners, fountains, polished surfaces, and the sound of water moving. In smaller baths, it may be plainer, but the principle is the same. Heat is answered by cold. The body is brought back from softness into alertness. The attendant gathers used cloths and moves them away. He notices who is ready to leave and who will go back for another round of warmth. Some bathers pass through the rooms once, following the proper order with satisfaction. Others circle back, visiting the warm room again, then the hot, then the cold, as if the whole building is a slow conversation between temperatures. This rhythm is part of the bathhouse's charm. There is no single sound that defines it. Instead, there are many small sounds layered together. Water against stone, sandals on tile, a bench creaking, a bronze vessel set down, someone calling for oil, someone else laughing in the steam. The human elements are brief and ordinary. A hand on a pool edge, a figure wrapped in cloth at the far side of the room, a pair of sandals waiting near a doorway. These are enough to remind us that the bathhouse was not a ruin when it mattered. It was used, warmed, wet, crowded, cleaned, and used again. By the cold pool, the attendant resets the room for the next visitor. The quiet hours between crowds. Not every hour is crowded. There are moments when the bathhouse thins. The loudest visitors have moved on. The men who came in pairs have finished their conversations. The regulars have settled into their habits. For a short while, the attendant can hear individual sounds again. A drop of water from the edge of a basin. The faint hiss of steam. The scrape of a stool being moved back against a wall. These quieter hours are not rest exactly, but they are easier to carry. The attendant folds cloths, straightens tools, rinses a strigil, and checks the oil flasks. He looks along the benches for forgotten objects. A belt pin, a sandal strap, a small purse if the owner is unlucky or careless. The baths are full of little losses. People leave things behind because heat makes them loose in the mind. They forget how many flasks they brought. They accuse one another of taking what was misplaced. They return in a hurry, still damp from the cold pool, searching for a ring, a comb, a clasp, or a familiar scrap of cloth. The attendant becomes part keeper, part witness. He knows who complains before looking. He knows who tips if treated well. He knows who will ask for the hottest room, then leave it almost at once. He knows which bench gathers the most water, and which lamp needs trimming before evening. The bathhouse teaches observation. It teaches that luxury is made of repetition. The same wiping, folding, carrying, heating, emptying, and returning. The same room made ready again and again. The same tools placed where a hand will reach for them without thinking. In the quiet hour, a distant figure crosses a doorway and disappears into steam. Another sits at the far edge of the warm room, only a shape behind vapor. Nothing important seems to happen, and yet the whole bathhouse depends on these unimportant moments being done properly. Talk, rest, and passing news. The bathhouse is also a place where news travels slowly, not officially, not like a notice read aloud in the forum, more softly than that. A rumor carried into the changing room, a joke repeated near the warm pool, a complaint about prices, a story about a neighbor, a whisper about someone's son, someone's debt, someone's new appointment, someone's disgrace. The attendant hears more than he says. He may not be invited into the conversations, but he is often close enough to catch their edges. While replacing a cloth, he hears the name of a magistrate. While collecting a basin, he hears about a ship delayed by weather. While rinsing a strigil, he hears two men agree that everything was better last year. The baths soften social boundaries, but they do not erase them. Rank still exists. Money still exists. Servants still serve. Important men still expect to be noticed. Yet in the warm room, voices can mingle more easily than they do in the street. Everyone is reduced a little by steam, oil, and bare feet. For the attendant, this makes the work delicate. He must be present without becoming intrusive. He must hear requests without seeming to listen to secrets. He must pass through groups without breaking the shape of their conversation. Public service requires a kind of invisibility. There are moments of rest as well. A bather sits alone with eyes closed. Another leans back against warm stone, no longer speaking. Someone trails fingers through water and watches ripples travel outward. The public room briefly becomes private, not because it is empty, but because each person has turned inward. This is part of why the bathhouse suited sleep history so well. Its drama is small, its movements repeat. Heat, water, oil, talk, rest, cooling, dressing, leaving. A human day made into a circle. The attendant sees the circle many times. By evening, the conversations change, but the pattern remains. People arrive carrying the world. They leave carrying a little less of it.
Evening in the bathhouse.
By evening, the baths hold the day inside them. The air is heavier now. The stone has absorbed heat from hours of fire. The floors have known hundreds of steps. The benches have been warmed by bodies, cooled by water, and wiped clean more times than anyone counted. Outside, the city moves toward dinner. Inside, a few final bathers linger. A man sits in the warm room longer than he needs to. Another stands near the cold pool, gathering courage for one last plunge. Two voices carry from the changing room, quieter than they were when the afternoon crowds filled the space. The attendant begins the slow work of closing without making it feel like closing. He gathers cloths from corners. He takes away empty oil vessels. He rinses the tools that must be clean by morning. He checks the floors where water has spread too far. He watches for the last visitors who delay because the bathhouse is warmer than the street and easier than home. There is kindness in not hurrying them too sharply. Everyone who works in a public place knows the final hour. It has a different texture. The work is nearly over, but not yet. The body wants to stop, but the room still asks for attention. One more bench, one more basin, one more forgotten flask, one more voice calling from the doorway. The furnace below is allowed to ease, not extinguished all at once, but brought down from the height of the day. The hottest room slowly loses its edge. The tepidarium becomes merely warm. The cold room feels colder as the lamps become more noticeable. The attendant stands for a moment beside the pool and listens. Water, cooling stone, distant street noise, and the last small movements of a building returning to itself. Tomorrow, it will begin again. But for now, the bathhouse is slowly letting go of the day. Cleaning water and stone. When the rooms begin to empty, the bathhouse shows what the day has done to it. Water has traveled everywhere, across floors, beneath benches, into corners, around sandals, and along the edges of pools. Oil has left a faint shine on stone. Cloth has shed fibers. Feet have carried dust into rooms meant for cleanliness. The bathhouse cleans people and then must itself be cleaned. This is slow work. The attendant gathers what can be gathered first. Cloths, flasks, scrapers, sandals that no one has claimed, small objects left in niches. Then comes the wiping, rinsing, sweeping, pushing, lifting, and setting straight. A pool is beautiful when still, but heavy when managed. Water must be kept usable. Channels must be watched. Drains must not be blocked. Edges must be cleared of slippery residue. The floor near the cold plunge may need attention again and again, because bathers leave water wherever they go. There is a particular tiredness that comes from cleaning stone. Stone is hard, and it does not thank you. It holds water in low places. It shows streaks in lamplight. It cools under the hand and warms again where the heat still rises. The attendant bends, wipes, stands, moves, bends again. Yet cleaning is also a way of returning the building to itself. The day has filled the rooms with bodies and voices. Cleaning reduces them back to shape. A bench becomes a bench again. A doorway clears. The changing room regains its order. The warm room loses its scattered towels. The stone around the pool reappears. The work is repetitive enough to become almost meditative. A cloth passes over the same surface. Water is pushed toward the same drain. A bronze basin is placed in the same corner. A lamp is trimmed to the same small flame. This is not the part of Roman life that monuments celebrate, but without it, the monument would smell, slip, stain, and fail. The quiet dignity of the bathhouse depends on cleaning no one remembers. After the lamps are lowered. When the last bather leaves, the bathhouse changes character. The public rooms become service rooms again. Without voices, the scale of the building feels different. The high ceilings seem higher. The pools seem darker. The warm room, so full of bodies and talk a few hours earlier, now holds only the fading memory of heat. The attendant walks the rooms in order. Changing room, warm room, hot room, cold room, back again. He checks the niches for anything left behind. He gathers stray cloth. He places the strigils together, their curved metal edges catching the last light. He closes the oil vessels, moves benches back into place, and leaves sandals where they can be found in the morning. The bathhouse is never perfectly clean, not by modern standards, and never perfectly still. But it can be ready. Ready is the goal. Ready is enough. Somewhere below, ash is cooling. Somewhere near the furnace, a worker finishes the less visible part of the evening. The heat that made the day comfortable has left its own mess behind. Soot, wood scraps, dull coals, and tools blackened by use. Above, the attendant sees only the final surface of the work. He trims a lamp. The room darkens. He steps past the cold pool. The water gives back a faint reflection of the ceiling. He pauses in the tepidarium, where the warmth remains longest. It is not hot now, only gentle, the kind of warmth that stays in stone after people have gone. For all its grandeur, The bathhouse ends the day like any working place, with tired hands, small corrections, and the hope that tomorrow will be orderly. The attendant closes the last door. Outside, Rome is not asleep, but it is quieter than before. Inside, the bathhouse keeps its remaining warmth in the dark, waiting for fire, water, oil, and footsteps to return.
A final walk through the warmth.
Before leaving, the attendant walks the rooms once more. Not quickly. There is no point in rushing the last inspection. The bathhouse has many small ways of hiding disorder. A cloth behind a bench, a dropped clasp near a pool, a lamp burning too low, a door not quite closed, a place where water has gathered in the dark. He begins where the bathers began. The changing room is quieter now. The wall niches are empty or nearly empty. The benches no longer carry piles of clothing. The air smells faintly of damp wool, oil, lamp smoke, and cooling plaster. Then, the warm room. Here, the heat lingers as if reluctant to leave. Steam no longer fills the chamber, but a softness remains near the stones. The attendant pauses, not because he has nothing to do, but because the room feels different when it belongs to no one. The hot room has lost its force. Earlier, it pressed against the skin. Now, it holds only the memory of fire. A bronze basin reflects a small flame. The floor is still warm in places. The sandals are set aside for morning. Near the cold room, the air sharpens. The pool reflects the architecture in broken shapes. Columns, lamps, and ceiling arches drift on the surface. If a drop falls from somewhere above, the reflection trembles and reforms. The attendant has seen this countless times. Still, the final walk has its own quiet reward. During the day, he serves the bathers. At the end, he sees the building itself, its sequence, its hidden logic, its dependence on water, heat, stone, oil, cloth, and human hands. Tomorrow, people will come again, as if the baths have simply appeared ready. They will not think about the last walk. That is all right. Some work is successful because it disappears. The attendant lowers the final lamp, steps into the cooler air near the door, and leaves the bathhouse holding the warmth it has not yet given up.